Joining me now, it's Heiko, Khoo, Workers' Party of Britain candidate, and that's to talk about his campaign in Putney, which is in central London, where he's challenging Labour. Heiko, thanks for joining us here at today's News Talk TNT.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
You're campaigning in a constituency currently held by Labour. Now, they're riding high in the polls. How do you fancy your chances?
I think the chances are quite good, funnily enough. Initially, when I started out, I didn't think there was much hope, but I would be able to intervene and gain a certain amount of support. But on the streets, there's a lot of enthusiasm around the issue of Gaza primarily, but also a disgust at the similarity or lack of distinction between Labour and the Tories on all fundamentals. And people do not like Keir Starmer and the way the Labour Party has gone. So I'm sort of riding on the back of that at the moment.
That's the interesting thing, Heiko. I see Keir Starmer as a man who'll highlight the problems, but he hasn't got any solutions. And he could equally well run the current Conservative Party as the Labour Party, because they're the same. I described them as blancmange earlier on when I was talking to an earlier guest. George Galloway is a bit like Nigel Farage, a clear, strong-minded character who leaves us in no doubt where he stands, for example, about a ceasefire in Gaza. You've got about 150 candidates across the country, so roughly a quarter of the constituencies. Is it possible that as the Conservatives implode, Labour in government, and they will be the next government probably, will also implode and the Workers' Party could step in?
Yes, the objective of the Workers' Party is to replace the Labour Party as the mass party of the working class, which once upon a time, at least, the Labour Party was, and historically in the consciousness of the mass of working people, the Labour Party was seen as a party of the working class. But it still has that link to the trade unions, but it's a tenuous link.
So I've never been in the Labour Party, but I've had dealings with them since I was in my late teens. And it seems to me they've eaten themselves out in terms of moral narrative, which creates a vacuum. George Galloway would be an interesting leader of the opposition, and Farage would be an interesting prime minister, and they could juxtapose, but they don't compete. And what I'm looking at now is a potential reset of British politics, where the other two parties just deflate like a punctured tire, leaving a space for you to go in. But that's probably a 5-year project. Has the Workers' Party got the stamina and the endurance to do that?
Well, we'll see. After the 2008 crisis, internationally, there has been a polarization of politics, primarily based around the needs of the mass of working people and the dispossessed or the middle classes who have lost their position in society, and the prospects for development and advancement of children of the middle classes and children of the working classes has gone down the Swanee. And the consequence of that is that society has become more polarized. One element of that is polarization, which you could sort of call, in inverted commas, to the right, and polarization, in inverted commas, to the left. I think those distinctions are a little bit mystified by a lot of linguistic games that have been played by the Liberals in order to present themselves as being left-wing. But in actual fact, in terms of the sort of classical class conceptions, society has become polarized on a class basis, with what I would call Nigel Farage, the sort of more middle-class conservative layer, pulling away from the Conservative Party, and with Galloway representing, at the moment, the shift to the left, which Jeremy Corbyn represented only a few years ago.
I was wondering if Corbyn might at some point align himself with the Workers' Party, but that's for another time. What is the Workers' Party's core agenda? What are you saying when you knock on doors?
I'm saying that the economy and society has been riven apart, and that the way to resolve this is the classical solutions proposed by the Labour movement. In other words, socialism. And by socialism, I mean public ownership of the commanding heights of the economy, beginning with water, electricity, gas, taking control of the banking system and putting workers in positions of authority and command by training them up to be managers and providing democratic control and accountability inside the major workplaces and in society as a whole. Democratize society, democratize the economy, and take public ownership wherever necessary in order to achieve the objectives that society wants.
What reaction do you get?
I think the response is very good, but at the moment, it's primarily around the question of Gaza, because Gaza is the dividing line on a moral front and a political front for huge swathes of the population. For example, the MP or former MP in this area in Putney, Fleur Anderson, she received thousands, she said so herself, she received thousands of letters from constituents complaining about the position on Gaza. And yesterday it was a hustings amongst students, and there was a raucous support for opposition on the question of Gaza. So sometimes politics is, if you like, divided around one issue. One issue becomes the issue that manifests and opens up the pathway to all the rest of the issues.
You are a regular speaker in a place called Speaker's Corner in London, which is a public forum for discussion. You run Karl Marx walking tours in London. You write for a Chinese opinion leader. You're a dangerous radical. Why haven't you been arrested and put in with Julian Assange?
I've been arrested many times, but not kept in detention for so long. Maximum was 17 hours.
Why do you do it? Why do you campaign so assiduously?
I believe the system of capitalism is the system that produces the sort of barbarity we're seeing today. And the ideas that I've been holding on to, doesn't mean I haven't adjusted them at all, but I've been holding on to since I was 17 years of age, and I'm 60 years of age now, I think are still the best method for understanding the world. And in particular, since the 2008 crisis, that has just dragged on and on and on and found new iterations and forms, but constantly been a factor in the background, driving down the living standards of the people, leading people to despair. And since coronavirus 2020, the crisis has become even more extreme, and the methods applied by the ruling classes have also become more extreme. And therefore, consciousness is beginning to catch up with reality. And I think, as I said, that Gaza is the lightning rod that is opening up the pathway for a dramatic change in consciousness in the world.
Heiko, Khoo, I couldn't have asked for a more apt summary of what many of us at today's News Talk want to see, a reawakening of consciousness. I really appreciate that positive note to finish my programme on. And that is my time up for today. I'll be back again tomorrow morning. Rick Munster on next for a couple of hours of news and comment. But you have yours at tntradio.live. Always a pleasure to work with my team. Always a pleasure to serve you. I'm Lembit. Opik. This is today's News Talk TNT. Have a good day.